Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Angie Viscianen, and I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a pre-law mentoring program that connects prospective law students to lawyers for mentoring. And we started doing these free weekly Zoom meetups at the beginning of COVID-19 to allow students to bond with lawyers and law school admissions professionals and law school faculty, so that you guys can get a glimpse into our world and feel more connected with each other during these challenging times. So I've been bringing on guest speakers every week, and today I'm very excited to have Jim McKeown with us, and he will be talking to you about how to navigate these tough times and find a job. Jim, I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being on, and I appreciate everybody that's on the call right now. Taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it. I'll give you sort of a quick overview of my my history. So I started out undergrad. I went to Penn State, and then law school. I went to Penn State as well. I graduated from there in 2006. Fast forward to 2007, I started working for a small law firm. I was the only associate. So I got a lot of really great experience, a lot of variety of experience. I actually wrote an article about, I think it was titled, How a Small Law Firm Can Be a Big Start. I'd be more than happy to share that with you, Angie. And so it was a great experience. But in 2009, the economy, as we all know, the economy went into a bit of a downturn, to put it mildly. And, I was unemployed. And so, I remember, kind of wondering immediately when I was unemployed, what am I going to do? We, went ahead and we moved from an apartment that we were living in to a place that was, in a different spot and a little less expensive, and just was trying to find a job in a number of different ways, reaching out, doing a number of different things, which I'll talk about. I wrote down some tips or things that I either did or, looking in hindsight, I wish I would have done, that hopefully resonates with everyone on this call. And there's just a couple of things, that stand out to me. I went ahead and I got engaged during that time, nevertheless. And I'll never forget, I popped the question and, everybody was saying congratulations to my wife, and one of her friends, which shall remain nameless, it was congratulations. And I think it was like, next text, did Jim find a job yet? So it was, I felt like, it was constantly, on my mind. And so, I kept working at it. I kept doing certain things, like I said, that I'll share. And, it was just sort of, it was interesting because I can remember it right now. I was coming out of a class. I was finishing up getting my LL.M in corporate law and finance down at Widener. And I was coming out of a class, and I pulled out my my phone, and nine and a half times out of 10, anytime that somebody left me a voicemail, it was usually something some sort of thing about a warranty on a car or something like that. It wasn't usually anything having to do with a job, but I just happened to listen to the voicemail. Which I think the takeaway is, you got to always keep your ears and your eyes open. And it turned out to be, for an interview. And I interviewed, and that's the job I've been working at for over 10 years now.
Jim, can you tell us a little bit? So did you do your LL.M right after the JD program, or did you do them in conjunction with each other, or how did that work?
Sure. So what happened was, I was down towards like Delaware County. Widener Law School is in Delaware. I had, towards the latter part of my JD academic career, I had gotten very interested in corporate law and things like that. And so I thought, well, this is great. This is close to where I live. you know, let me go ahead and try that. So there was, I want to say there was maybe like 7 or 8 months gap between when I graduated from law school and then started in the LL.M program, just because it seemed to make sense, just given the time that I had and my interests at the time. So, you know, I was doing
When
that.
you were doing your JD degree, did you focus on finding jobs in corporate, or were you in a different practice area focus?
No, that's interesting. So I think I took like every labor and employment law class that they had, because my undergrad was in labor and industrial relations. So I thought, well, I'm going to do labor law or employment law. And like I said, I think I took almost every class that they had. And so this is sort of like a lesson in and of itself, in that I didn't take corporate law until I think it was my last semester of law school. And it was one that I really hadn't had a huge interest in. I was like, okay, well, let me see what it's all about. And then from, you know, the first week or 2 weeks, I was like, wow, this is really interesting. This is really great. And actually my professor that was for that corporate law class wound up writing me a letter of recommendation for the LL.M. So, you know, I think the big takeaway there is, like, again, you know, you think you have certain interest, and you do, but you need to leave your you know, your options open and look at things that, you know, might pique your interest and be an avenue towards some other way to learn.
So where did you go to law school for your JD?
Sure. So I went to Penn State for my JD, and that was at the time that it was exclusively in Carlisle. Now there's 2 campuses. So.
And then where did you do your LL.M?
That was down at Widener in Delaware.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, I was living right down in like sort of the Delaware County area, was working in Delaware, living there. And so it made, it just worked for me with, you know, what I was interested in. And, you know, of course, Delaware is huge with corporate law, and had a lot of really excellent professors. So it was a great experience.
So when you were coming out of your JD program, did you have summer jobs while you were in law school, and did you get an offer for afterwards, or did you, were you still looking for a job between the JD and the LL.M?
Sure. So what happened was I had a summer job before my senior year or third year of law school. And then after that, I had a job lined up after that, but I had to move home just because the circumstances didn't line up for, you know, with living where I would have to live out in Harrisburg and everything like that. So I moved home. And so after that, I had a very short job, and then I went and worked at the small law firm where I'd been working prior to, you know, being unemployed.
And do you remember how you found out about the job that you ended up interviewing for and then accepting? Was it through your school, or were you just sending out applications blind, or how?
Sure. So if I remember correctly, the one that I got in 2007 was, I think it was a newspaper ad. I want to say that I saw an ad in the newspaper. The one that where I work now, I'm trying to remember how I heard about it. I think I maybe saw a posting, but I can't entirely remember. But yeah, so the one that I had got, you know, sort of right out of law school within, you know, 6 months or so, or maybe like 9 months. Yeah, that was one that if my memory serves me correctly, it was like a newspaper article, I want to say. And that one was great experience, but it was pretty far away from where I lived. So I met, well, sort of a side story. Okay. So I met my now wife, who was living close to, where I was working. And so eventually that's when, you know, I moved down to Delaware, or Delaware County rather, after that.
Okay.
So, But yeah, that's the other thing too. Like if when I graduated from law school, if you would have said to me, oh, in so many years you'll be living in the southernmost part of Chester County, I'd be like, well, first of all, where's Chester County? Why am I going to be living in the southernmost part? But I mean, we lived in Kennett Square. That's where we had moved to. So, like I said, back in 2009 when I was unemployed, there was a number of different things that I did. And like I said, some of these I'm going to cover. And I wanted to give a list, and, I periodically put a list of, of just insights, things that I either did or looking back, I think would have been a good idea for me to do, back in 2009 or perhaps earlier than that. And so one of the things that I did, and, it's kind of a tip that I had, was what I did was I created a visual representation of my job search. So what I did was I had an Excel spreadsheet. And so what I did was I had, like, for example, in column A, I had the places I was applying to. In column B, I would list next, where, what date I had sent my resume. And then next to that, I think I put the details of who I had, who was the person that I had sent my resume to. And then the next column over that was when I followed up, right? So the reason why you do that is because for a number of reasons. Is, first of all, you're sending out resumes. It's really hard to keep track, right? So if you have a visual representation of it, what that next thing is that you're going to be doing, right? The other thing too is, when you wake up, sometimes, when you're applying for jobs and everything like that, you're like, okay, what's my next thing? Well, if you have a visual representation, okay, maybe you preloaded some places that you're going to send resumes to into column A. You're like, okay, well, I got to send resumes to these places. Then I got to follow up with these places that I sent my resume to. And then also because you kept track of when you sent your resume, when you follow up, you can say, oh, I sent my resume on such and such a date, so that the person who you're following up with, it's very easy for them to go back and retrieve the resume that you had sent, right? And then the other component too is, sometimes, when you're applying for jobs and everything like that, it's good to have that visual representation of, okay, this is what I accomplished today, right? And so that is one of the things that I think is really helpful when you're trying to find a job, is to have a system and have a process that you can look to each and every day to know what know what you want to do. And also at the end of the day, to be able to look at it and see, the progress that you've made.
I love that advice. I actually heard something similar of somebody who was creating a spreadsheet. This is a lawyer that I talked to recently, and they're fresh out of law school. They're searching for jobs, already passed the bar, but haven't found something yet. They're also using a spreadsheet to track everything. But one of the interesting things that he found was, after tracking, when did I send the resume? Did I hear back, or did I hear silence? If I got an interview, did I get an offer or not? He was able to see where he was going wrong in his job search. So he was like, at first I noticed I wasn't even getting an interview request. So then I was like, it's my application materials that are messed up. It's something in my resume, something in my cover letter. I needed to address those. So then once he tweaked that, he started getting interviews. But then he'd go and interview, and then he wouldn't get it. And so he was like, then I realized, oh, it was what I was doing in the interview. But it was easier for him to conceptualize, okay, am I making progress? What, am I even getting callbacks, or am I just sending hundreds of resumes in blind and not getting anything,
Right. Yeah. I mean, like anything else, any other endeavor you want to accomplish, it's really helpful to have a process. And to the extent that you can, go back to that process and execute, consistently and know what the next step is really important. Sort of sliding into another tip that I think I've put out there before is, reading the legal news. So reading the legal news, I think, accomplishes a number of different things. So the first thing is you're staying apprised of developments in the law. For example, if a big case got overruled, or there was a big decision made, or there's perhaps there's a big development, whether it's some sort of legislation or, even a litigation or something like that, you're staying aware of what's happening in the legal arena. At the same time, you could find something that piques your interest, and you could kind of take that thread and start to learn more and more. And it can take you places that you would not have otherwise have thought about. And so that's really a good thing as well to do. And then the other thing too is, if you find out about something where there is, something starting where there's like, let's just say a big case or something like that, then, they may need people, right? So, you could go and, send your resume to, a particular, whoever's initiating the, the case, or whoever's involved in the case, and, get your foot in the door, so to speak. Maybe they don't need somebody right now, but that's not to say that, in a month from now, 2 months from now, they could be where they do need somebody, right? And so if you're doing that follow-up process, you're kind of going to where the work could potentially be by following the legal news, in addition to the other things that that would benefit you just from reading the legal news. The other thing that I've put out there that I think is important is to not just apply to places that have job postings, right? So, just because, it's just, obviously you want to apply to places that have postings and that interest you, but, there could be places that are right on the cusp of, putting out a job posting, right? Or maybe they haven't thought about it for a little while, like, oh, we really need to, perhaps, bring someone else in, and it's, sort of in the front of their mind, but it's something that they may be sort of kicking around a little bit. But you sending your resume or contacting them may be that little push to say, oh yeah, we do, we really do need to, initiate this. We really need to perhaps bring somebody on board to help with, whatever it is. And then the other thing too is that, with job postings, obviously there's a lot of resumes, a lot of applications, a lot of everything, right? So if you are applying to a place that, may be right on the cusp of doing a job posting, and you send in your resume, you may, you're basically the first in line, right? Because there is no job posting. So that could be an advantageous position to be in. Well,
and I think I read somewhere there's statistics saying that, oh, sorry, let me unpin the video. But so I think I read somewhere that, 70% of job postings or job openings never get posted. They're filled before they're even posted because they're, circulating it to people that they know, right? So you have to hear about it. You have to have your ear to the ground. So talking to people in that organization, or even making sure you have good relationships with legal recruiters and other people who might learn about these positions before they get posted, is a really good idea to continue talking to people in the industry.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's always important to have a good network, to get information, as quickly as possible, no matter what the endeavor is. And to that, sort of pulling on that thread a little bit as far as from information, a good place to go to contact is your local bar associations, because, you can go and contact them and say, well, first of all, bar association, are you looking for anybody to help, with scheduling or, putting together materials or something like that, to be of help. Maybe they need help, maybe they don't, but maybe they do know of a firm that needs help, or maybe even if not at that time, they don't, maybe they don't know of somebody that needs help. They're constantly in contact with local law firms and, everything like that, because they're part of the local bar association. You don't know, they could be on the phone with somebody, 2 weeks later, and the person saying, boy, I got more work than I know what to do with. And I could, oh, well, it sounds like you're pretty busy. I have a resume from somebody I just got, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Again, it's kind of like a multifaceted, multi-pronged strategy where you're just, you're kind of putting yourself out there, making it known to different groups that, that you're looking for employment. And then if you're doing the follow-up, you're kind of, tending to it, so to speak. You're making sure that, oh, yep, I'm still looking. I know that I had sent my resume, 2 weeks ago. I'm, just following up. So you sort of stay top of mind, so to speak.
For all the pre-law folks on the call, if you don't know what a bar association is, they're literally associations and membership organizations for lawyers. So, and usually they're only open to lawyers, not non-lawyers and other legal professionals. But there are some associations for like paralegals and some associations for other types of positions that are related to law. So if you're looking to join a local bar association, you usually have to be either a law student or a lawyer to join, but sometimes if you talk to bar associations, they'll allow you to attend their events even as a pre-law student. So feel free to start learning about those associations now as you're going to think about how do you find lawyers to interact with and how do you discover more about different legal practice areas, because there are bar associations at every level and for almost every interest. So there's bar associations at the state and local levels. You might have a county bar association or you might have a city bar association. You also might have interest-related bar associations like minority bar associations. So there's the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association. There's the Hispanic Bar Association. You also might have a women's lawyers organization. And so all of those are considered bar associations. Just a tip.
That's great. That's a great point. I mean, there are, yeah, absolutely. There are tons of bar associations out there. And they're, every interaction I've ever had with a bar association has been excellent. They're very willing to help. So it's a great resource. And, some of the tips I'm putting in there are that I'm talking about are ones that are, are just good things to know. I think once in a while, during the process, you need to give yourself permission to just be frustrated, right? I mean, we all get frustrated. And I think that one of the things that, I remember I used to just kind of say like, all right, I'm going to be frustrated for the next 5 minutes and then I'm going to move on. Kind of give yourself permission to do that because, it can be tough. So I just remember, during those times, you're working and you're really trying, and sometimes you just need to give yourself permission to be, a little frustrated, and then, give yourself that moment, and then, move on to forge ahead. The other thing is that, with, law students and things like that, you want to be able to the extent that you can, there's always legal publications that are looking for authors, whether it's a newsletter or something related to a bar association or what have you. There are tons and tons of legal related publications that, I would say, check them out, see if there's see if there's an interest for, you to write an article, or you could write an article, and then, which is one of my later tips, you put it on LinkedIn. You can put articles on LinkedIn. And so you can get a lot out of that in that, one, you're going to learn an area of the law that you probably didn't know as well before you wrote the article. Number two, you're going to signal to people that this is an area of interest that I have, right? Three, a lot of people are going to, see your name, and they're going to say, oh, this is the type of area that this individual is interested in. Maybe they reach out to you or something like that. It's just really good. And then the other thing too is when you go into your next interview, you can take that article with you and have it as a writing sample. So the value that
people that you're being productive during your job, right? And you can show that you have a demonstrated interest in that area. Even better, you can use that article to maybe partner with an existing practitioner that you look up to. Reach out to someone in your bar association who's practicing in your area and ask them, hey, would you like to, I see that you're interested in this area and that you've published a few pieces. Can I, co-write a paper with you and basically help do all the work, but at least it gives you a way to interact with that person.
Yeah, that's a great point. To collaborate on something, that's awesome. You could, work with someone, and then they, really you can talk about, the area that you're writing about, but also kind of, the entirety of it. If let's just suppose it's on, just pick anything, corporate law. You could be writing about a very specific issue, but in the process of collaboration, you could be talking about a number of other issues, and really let them know your high level of interest, which is always a good thing, because you don't know, they could be talking to someone who needs someone to help out, and they can already know that you are very, very interested in that area because of the fact that you had collaborated with them on an article. So, that's an excellent point. And another thing is, this is sort of like I guess the emotional part of it is, to try to the extent that you can to, if you can, try to practice gratitude. I mean, it's very easy to focus on, and look, I've been there, to focus on the thing that you don't have, which is, a job, employment, which is what you're really striving to get. I get that. But, one of the things that can be beneficial, let's just say 3 things a day. Just pick 3 things a day to be grateful for, and it can kind of, help to offset, that obvious thing that's missing, and kind of push you through, to forge ahead. So that's something that I think is really important.
I absolutely love that advice. I think mindset when you're job hunting is the most difficult thing to manage, because here you are, you're feeling like I'm sending out hundreds of resumes and then I'm just not hearing back anything, and it can be so frustrating. It can be so easy to get down on yourself. So maintaining your mindset is really important, taking care of your mental state, and the self-talk that you give yourself is really important. So practicing gratitude lets you step out of that negativity box for a second, right, and focus on the good things in your life, the good things that you appreciate. I think one of the other things is that you should always remember, put it in perspective, like nobody has a sign on their back of all the times they've been rejected. When you're looking at people's LinkedIn profiles and they have these amazing jobs, or if you're looking at their resume and they have these amazing positions, you don't see all the times that they've been rejected. But I guarantee you, many of us have tons of rejections. I talked to a guy who was a lawyer in-house at LinkedIn the other day, and he told me he applied to 30 different positions at tech companies because he really wanted to transition from litigation in-house. He wanted to go to a tech company. He applied at every single, tech company in the Valley, and they all told him no. And he said the worst feeling was that he interviewed with all of them, and it must have been something with his personality, because he was getting the interviews. He looked great on paper, and he wasn't getting the job. And he said he had just gotten so used to rejection that by the time he got the job offer from LinkedIn, he was so shocked. He was like, I had to read that email like 5 times because I was like, wait, they're actually taking me? And he said, when I talk to people now, all they see is I'm a lawyer at LinkedIn. They see that I'm in-house. They see that I've made it in a position that they really want to be in. What they didn't see is I got rejected from every company in the Valley. So,
right. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And one of the things that I, saying that I go to is like, look, so, you see somebody with, hammering on a rock, right? And it's, the 100th time the rock breaks, but it's not just the 100th time that broke the rock. It was the 99 times that you hit it beforehand. So every single interview that you go on, maybe it doesn't work out, but you learn something. You went on another interview, you gained a little bit more experience. Every single interaction that you have is sort of building and getting better and better. And so when you finally do get employed, it's sort of like it's a collective of all those experiences that you had.
And you can use the information you glean in interviews for your next interview. You should be getting experience in doing these interviews. Just going through the process, you should be learning just as much from the firms and about the industry as they are learning about you. Don't think of an interview as you're going in there to just spew your story at them and they either take it or leave it. You need to use that interview to your advantage. Ask them, how has your practice changed during COVID? What are the things that you're seeing coming down the pipeline that you need to adjust to or adapt to? And as they give you more of that information, you can use that in subsequent interviews. When you go to talk to similar firms or similar companies that are facing the same issues, you can use the same answers that they gave you. These are the solutions that you might want to use. So use that interview.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the other tips that, I think it's important during an interview, and that's what I did, back then. I would say, given, my resume and what we've talked about, is there anything that gives you pause in, perhaps me moving forward in this process? Now, if they tell you something and then that gives you the opportunity to touch on it and maybe in a way expound on something that you maybe didn't have an opportunity to expound on, maybe didn't expound upon it in a way that was effective, obviously, right? But even if you don't move forward in that process, you've gained a key piece of information in that if they're seeing something, in your experience or something like that hasn't fully been discussed or developed during either the resume, it's not coming off the page on the resume, or during the interview, you can preemptively, attack that, what they perceive to be a weakness in the resume and in the interview on the next interview. So every little bit, you're picking up more and more, you're learning more and more, so that you can preemptively, go after those areas that you may not have even, known.
Gosh, what a great question. I haven't even ever thought to ask that question. But yeah, that point at the end when the interviewer's like, do you have any questions for me? Those are the sorts of insightful questions you could ask to learn more about whether or not, and you can gauge where they are, how are they feeling about you at that time. So that's fantastic. Fantastic advice.
Well, thanks. And the other thing that, was really important for me, and you can find it, virtually, you can find it on the phone. I'm sure there are a number of different places. One of the things that really benefited me was the fact that I had a group. It was through my church at the time. We all got together. We shared in each other's frustration days. We shared in each other's triumphs. I mean, when somebody would get a job, they would bring donuts for everybody at the group, and coffee.
Fantastic.
And we would cheer them on, because we knew that one day we would be that person, So I can't emphasize that enough. To the extent that you can find a group or people that are in a similar situation, lean on each other. They have their frustrating days. When they have their frustrating days, you can pick them up. When you have your frustrating days, they vice versa. It's good. It's a good thing to try to surround yourself with.
That's a great tip too. For any law students that are on here or recent graduates, I actually moderate a job hunting support group for like 300 unemployed law students right now. So if you need a tribe, I got you. So reach out.
Great. Another tip that I have is, so with the job search, you should treat it like a job, right? But that goes both ways. You need to put in the time. You need to set a time for your day to really put in the work. If you want to use that visual representation, you use that. But just like a job, there's an end of day where you give yourself time to recharge, give yourself time to relax and get your energy level back to go ahead and attack the next day. Because, you only have so much energy, right? And there's only so much you can do in a day. So, I think it's really important to set those limits, set those expectations in that saying, look, I'm going to treat it like a job, but also set those limits, those corresponding limits as well. This is again, one of those, mental type of things that I think is important too, is to just be mindful of the amount of information about overall job numbers and things like that you absorb. I mean, you could probably spend all day going on different news outlets and newspapers and websites You know, I mean, I think the jobs report just came out today. It comes out, I think, every Thursday. I mean, you could spend the whole day doing that. But, you know, and I think I used this analogy in a post, you know, if a farmer is dealing with drought, they're not going to sit around and read about drought all day. They're going to try to learn about what seed grow in this certain type of dry earth, right? They're going to learn about, you know, what fertilizers are best, how best to get something to grow under these conditions. And they're also looking on the horizon to the weather in hopes and expectation that there's a storm brewing so that the drought will be done. So I think it's really important to be mindful of the amount of that information that you absorb on a daily basis.
For sure. I know one of the students on this call today, she received a piece of advice that she shared with me that I thought was a beautiful representation of a good mindset. It's the thought to bloom where you were planted, right? You do the best you can with what you have. And a lot of people right now are thinking, woe is me, I'm job hunting during COVID, there's no jobs out there, but that's just not true. There's always opportunities where there is adversity. There's always opportunities where there is challenge. Lots of people right now are out there thinking differently, trying to find creative solutions, trying to do things differently. And people are now more open than ever to connecting online, to networking online. You can be out there talking to lawyers on LinkedIn, on Zoom. People are much more open to it now than they were last year. Trust me, I've been connecting with people that way. And so if you really wanted to take away anything positive from this time, it's that you can now start reaching out to people, total strangers online, and that they're more likely to talk to you than they would have been in the past. And so I think there's a lot that you can do right now, even if you are job hunting, to nurture those relationships, sow those seeds, and, you know, make sure that you can make hay out of whatever you have. So I think, you know, now is a good time to be building those connections, building your network, and just trying to do the best you can with what you've got.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite sayings is, you know, you gotta roll with the punches. You know, and you know, in this type of situation, you know, it's going to require, you know, tenacity. It's going to require, you know, a certain amount of, you know, resilience. It's going to require a certain amount of creativity, right? You know, I remember I had to exercise all of those things at the time, you know, when I was trying to find a job, you know, during the Great Recession. But you'll look back on it when you're employed and say, wow, I did that. You know, and there's a certain amount of strength that comes from that, you know, you look back and say, wow, you know, I put in the work, I put in the time, and good things happen.
How many applications do you think you sent out during that time?
Oh my God. I'm
curious.
I can't even.
Did you lose track?
I can't even venture a guess. I mean, I mean, it was just, you know, you
think it was over 100?
I would, yeah, sure, yeah. I would have to think, yeah. You know, it's just, you know, but it's, you know, you also, when you get a no may not be a no. A no may be a not right now, right? So that's really important why you have to follow up. Because somebody, you know, when you send in the resume, that's like one point in time, you know, and then, you know, maybe a month down the road, 2 months down the road. If you're following up with them, all of a sudden something happens to where that opportunity opens up.
Especially right now, because I think a lot of companies are being really conservative and they're just taking it one day at a time. But you really don't know. Tomorrow could be very different than today.
Yeah, and I think that's really just, you know, beyond just looking for a job, I think it's a really important skill or to follow up. I mean, follow up is so important. You know, a book that I recently read towards the latter part of last year, beginning of this year, was by a real estate agent named Ryan Serhant. And it was called Sell It Like Serhant. And he has what he calls the 3 Fs, which is follow up, follow through, follow back. And I think that those can be applied to so many situations. You know, you follow up on your resume, you follow through and giving perhaps additional information if they require it. Or, you know, if there's a question, go ahead and follow through with the additional information. And then you follow back. You know, did you get everything that you need? Is there anything other information that you need? and you're really, in part, I think, setting an example for how you approach, whatever work you'll be given, that you're staying on top of it, you're following up, you're following through, you're following back.
I know
Rinse,
for some
rinse and
pre-law,
repeat.
I know for some pre-law students, they might have never been out in the workforce yet, and they might not have ever job searched before. So can you tell us a little bit about what does it actually look like when you follow up on your resume? Do you send in an application, and then how long do you wait before you follow up? What do you say when you do?
Sure. So I'm trying to remember back what I did. So I think I gave it a week, right? Because you think about it, you send in an email, other emails can come in pretty quickly, right? So I gave it a week, which I thought was enough time to where it gave the person to look at my resume, but not too much time to where, my resume could get lost in the shuffle, so to speak, right? And I would follow up, I would usually follow up with a phone call. I would follow up a phone call saying, I just wanted to follow up on my resume that I sent on such and such a date. I was just wondering if you've had a chance to look at it. If you wouldn't, and if they haven't, they say, well, would you mind if I called you in a week from now? And so, what it does is it lets them know that you're very interested. Number two, you've given them the information as to where to look for your resume. And you're also letting them know that that you're going to be following up, right? So those are three ways that you can do that. I like using the phone because they could really tell with your voice that you were interested, and maybe it opens up a conversation of, oh, well, do you know the kind of work that we do here? Well, yeah, I do know the kind of work that you do here. That's why I applied. I'm very much interested in whatever type of law that they practice, and that can be a little bit of a sort of pre-interview discussion, right?
And it helps you cut through the noise.
Exactly.
Moves you to the top of the stack, right?
Right.
When everybody is just, a piece of paper and you've got to find a way to break out of the mold, then that's a perfect way to try to get them to think differently about you.
Right. And, then they can put a voice to a resume. And so that's, that's definitely something that, that is important. And it kind of leads into, I talked about sort of the pre-interview, something I think is important too. And I think I post on LinkedIn, which is, the interview starts in the waiting room, right? So, a lot of times, you'll hear people, they go to the waiting room, they look at their phone, or they'll, be looking at their resume. Interact to the extent that you can, with the person that's there, the people that are there. When somebody walks by, say good morning or what have you, but also take a look around. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Take a look around and say, well, okay, yeah, I could really see myself working here. If it has a good vibe, has a good feel to it. Those are important things. So I wouldn't waste that opportunity. Obviously be as you would be in an interview when you're in the waiting room, because, they may be your coworker, very shortly.
I'd like to go ahead and open it up to the Q&A now. We received a lot of questions in the chat box. Is that all right? Do you
Sure,
have
absolutely.
anything else that you wanted to say before?
No, I just appreciate everybody being here.
So one of the questions that they asked was, do you feel like your LL.M made a big difference in terms of your networking or job searching for your particular field?
So I definitely feel like the LL.M was helpful. And one thing that I look at in particular was when I was in law school, I never did an externship with a judge. And during my LL.M, I was able to do an externship with the Superior Court of Pennsylvania. So that gave me the opportunity to do something that I hadn't been able to do in law school. The other thing it gave me the opportunity to do was, with the LL.M, I got more opportunities to write you know, just because a lot of it was you know, written paper based. At least that was the way it was in my in the you know, sort of the corporate law and finance. It was a lot of papers, so it gave me more of an opportunity to do that as well. So I definitely think it helped.
Have most of your job opportunities come from networking or traditionally applying?
Trying to remember. I think most of them have come just through applying. Yeah.
What firms would you suggest to target when many firms have been furloughing and laying off attorneys?
You know, you know, I think whenever you can be, you know, whenever you can look at a firm and say, okay, this is the area of law that I'm interested in, and articulate the reasons why you want to, you know, work for that firm. That's always a good place to start, right? Because then you can say, you know, I'm interested in this area of law. This is what I've been studying. You know, maybe you did a project or you wrote a paper or something like that. And then you can say, well, you know, I think that this really lends itself to the areas of practice that your firm practices in, or if you're going into an agency or some other governmental department, you can say, well, look, I think it really lends itself. I mean, basically, what I'm saying is, you know, if you can be, you know, very intentional about, you know, why you're applying and how you think that it's in alignment with your goals, I think that's always a good place to start.
And I'd say if you're a very junior attorney in general, big law firms have a very, they've got a very set way that they go about recruiting. And so they usually, you know, hire people from their summer associate classes and everything like that. So as a junior associate, they're not usually willing to hire you outside of the normal cycles. So applying to mid-sized firms or small firms, solo practitioners, you know, those firms are more likely to make hiring decisions on an ad hoc basis. So you might have some better luck with smaller organizations than large organizations.
Good point.
So how do you find a legal recruiter, and what's the proper way to approach them? And especially, what's the proper way virtually to approach them right now?
So I can speak to that from, I actually just read an article that I believe it was Colin Levy had been in the article. And so I can only relay what I read, which is that, you know, the way to go about it is to, I think they had said to reach out, explain what your goals are, and, you know, explain the type of work that you want to do, because then that way they know exactly, you know, when they're looking at a number of opportunities, they say, okay, well, this is exactly where this person wants to go. And it would be a good fit, given what their aspirations are.
And I can tell you in my experience, I worked with a legal recruiter when I was lateraling from a small boutique to a large firm. And I actually talked to dozens of recruiters during that time and eventually chose one. What I started to realize was many recruiters have a niche, like in certain practice areas, they're good at placing, certain geographic markets they're good at placing, and they may not have really any idea about what you do, and you might not have any idea about what they do. So I think the best approach is really reach out to them on LinkedIn, reach out to them cold and just say, you know, hi, I saw that you're a recruiter in this area and that your firm places people in certain practice areas. At least do your homework that much. And then say, you know, would you mind if we had a phone call so that I could learn a little bit more about your firm and you could learn a little bit more about me, to see if there might be any positions that you have available or you have open that you're trying to place for that might be a good fit. And I think most of them would be really receptive to that. Recruiters always like it when you're just as interested in them as they are as interested in you. I think when you go in assuming what they do and you just say, hi, I'm a job candidate, get me a job, they're likely to shut down. So it's better to go into it open-minded and work with them and ask them a lot of questions about, what types of clients do you typically work with? Big firm, small firm, who are you trying to place for? And then learn more about their process. And then ask, what open positions do you have? Do you think any of them might be a good fit for me after you've explained who you are? I think so. That was the questions from earlier. Adser asked a question. In law school, should you try joining law review, moot court, or mock trial? Which of those are likely to yield higher job prospects?
I think there's, I think it depends on really who you talk to.
It depends on the job, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I for myself, I did moot court when I was in law school, but this is something that you can do. So suppose you do moot court, but you're like, well, I really don't want to, take away the potential of, drafting or being published. That doesn't mean just because you didn't do law review, you can't be published. Because you could be part of some sort of group in law school, like a alternative dispute resolution society, which is what I was a part of. I think that's what it was called. And I wound up getting something published in their newsletter. So you can, have your cake and eat it too.
And I think for certain types of jobs where the writing is really, really important, clerking for a federal judge, for example, they love to see law review folks. They also want to see people who have some experience in litigation. So it wouldn't hurt to do moot court either, but I think that there's a little bit more of a skew towards law review. But if you're trying to apply to a firm that does litigation, I mean, of course, they would love to see mock trial, moot court. They want to see that you're a good oral advocate. So I think, different types of extracurricular activities open doors in different ways, but it also, just being involved in an extracurricular activity is a good thing. If you go through your law school experience and you don't get involved in anything outside of your academics, I think you're missing out on some major opportunities. So just pick one and do them. But you can also do, those might be the most popular ones, but there's also clinics. Clinics give you great experience because you're actually practicing law, you're meeting with real clients. So there's, tons of other extracurricular activities you might want to consider too.
Right. Yeah. When I was in law school, I did the public defender. I was worked for the public defender, and that was a great experience as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any opportunity that you can get when you're in law school, because either the opportunity will tell you, wow, I'm really interested in that. This is exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I'm going to continue doing this. Or you may get into it and think, wow, I really thought it was going to be this, but it's actually that, and I'm not as interested in it. And even if it turns out that you don't continue to be interested in it, you've learned a lesson right there.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Angie, for answering my question. And I'd just like to thank you, Jim, for showing support in my articles. I'm very grateful.
Well, hey, they're great. I really appreciate them. They're very entertaining, and just keep doing it.
That's why I was trying to. Sorry, Andy.
No, it's okay. I know we're at the top of the hour, so I just wanted to see if we had any other questions. But otherwise, Jim, would you be open to people connecting with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jim, for your time. I really, really appreciate all your advice today. Really excellent advice for job hunters. And thank you for all of you guys for spending your time with us today. Tomorrow we have a virtual happy hour event, so if you want to come and meet a bunch of lawyers and law students and pre-law students, it's a good time. It's interactive. We do breakout rooms, so you get to meet somebody one-on-one, and so we won't just be talking at you. So come join, and then we'll also have more meetups next week. So, all right, bye.
Great, thanks for having me.
Bye all.